one thing that it seems as though a lot of your policy work has been dedicated towards is addressing issues at these large kind of governmental scale. And it seems as though, on the one hand, the government has to be an essential actor to alleviate some of these big problems.
Yes.
One of the other things that we've talked a bit about in this class, we had interviews from Marion Nessel, who's talked a lot about the food politics of the United States and has painted a somewhat cynical view of the ability for organizations like the USDA to work at least in the consumer's benefit. Do you feel like there are less obstacles for the government to solve the kind of world hunger problems because people are more unified behind it? Or do you think a lot of those same kind of issues with kind of conflict of interest between producers and consumers?
The issues are very similar in the United States and developing countries in terms of what governments decide to do.
Yeah.
The problems, of course, are very different.
Yeah.
We are a rich country, unfortunately with quite a bit of poverty and hunger, but we are still a rich country. We could solve our problems if we chose to do so. And by we, I'm talking about the United States and the European Union. There are basically two issues here. One, governments will make the decisions that benefit the stakeholder groups that support the government. We in economics call that political economy. We need to understand where the power is, which stakeholder groups are the powerful ones. Which stakeholder groups can tell the government what to do? Whether you're talking about the United States or a developing country, these decisions that governments made are based almost exclusively on what those powerful lobby groups want them to do.
Yeah.
Now, we have democracy and individuals have a say in this matter, but when it really comes down to making the final decision, is a government going to spend more money on military equipment or on saving kids from dying from hunger and malnutrition? The answer is going to be, where does the government get the most support? Is the government likely to be re-elected or to maintain its position if it buys military equipment? Because poor people don't have much political power.
Yeah.
So if you are poor and your kids are dying, you can go to the government and say, look, this is unethical. You need to change that. And the government said, yes, absolutely, we'll do that. But of course they don't, because you have no power whatsoever. So here's the solution. We need to link the stakeholder groups' interests, those that influence government decisions. We need to link that to the interests of poor people.
Yeah.
That's what we call a win-win. You can, in fact, do that. But that requires an ethical dimension to it as well as an economic dimension.
Yeah.
And that can be done.
Yeah, so are there any kind of telling examples in your own policy work where you've kind of successfully linked the interests in that way?
There are many examples. I can give you one from Vietnam, for example, where we did some research. The Vietnamese government decided that they were going to have a rice policy that they thought would benefit poor people while at the same time generating foreign exchange through exports. We did some research with the government. The government asked us to do this research, and I'm now talking about the International Food Policy Research Institute while I was there, which showed that by changing these policies, they would benefit poor people and they would make more money for the government. That's a clear win-win. The government followed up on that. Yeah. We've done quite a bit of work with the Chinese government, and the beauty of the Chinese government, there are lots of bad things one could say about the Chinese government, but the beauty is that if they decide to do something, they do it. And we work with the Chinese government on trying to generate the evidence about what would the consequences be if they were to pursue one set of policies instead of another. And we discussed this with the government. If the government sees an opportunity for achieving the goals that they have, given their stakeholder groups, and the goals of poor people, they will pursue those win-win policies. And in fact, they've done a lot. China has done more to reduce poverty than any other country in the world during the last 40 years, or actually last 30 years. Since the end of the 70s, the number of poor and hungry people in China has dropped dramatically, primarily because of government policy changes.